So, first of all, thank you so much for having me here, for the invitation to speak here today about a very, very, very pressing and important topic. It's really an honor and a privilege to be here. So you did a bit of an introduction of me, so I won't go further into that. Just want to say that I attack this topic from a lot of different angles. But today, I'm not representing any organization or club or institution. Okay, I'm here as me, thinking and reflecting deeply upon these topics. So, a little more than 2 years ago, schools around the world faced what I would call an existential crisis. A crisis brought on by a generative AI system called ChatGPT. So this and very quickly similar tech products, AI products, capable of analyzing and formulating text, audio, pictures at a remarkable speed and accuracy created sort of a seismic shift for everyone. The perspectives were mind-blowing, right? And within the last years, educators have identified both benefits to this, but also challenges from generative AI, benefits and challenges. But what they did do, and I think that all of us can agree on that, they forced us to confront very profound questions about the role of schools, the purpose of education, and the relationship between humans and technology at a more fundamental level. And I want to stay at that fundamental level today. So why should students read and read deep when AI can summarize for them? Why should children learn complex and tough text analysis when AI can perhaps do it better? Why should we even have physical schools when we can just learn on the go, in the bed, in the kitchen? Home, it's so convenient there in bed, right? Why come out? Why have schools? How important is human critical thinking? Ethical reflection, really? Can we leave those to avatars? They're pretty good at putting up like modules on ethics. Finally, why should teaching exist as a human profession at all when we can just embrace AI for more personalized learning and cognitive tasks? So this very serious, in my opinion, last question was actually highlighted last year in Denmark. The Danish Employers Association, had hired Boston Consulting Group to conduct calculations about how in Denmark the public sector could save money. So their predictions suggested that in 2040, that's in 15 years, AI can replace almost every fourth elementary teacher in Denmark. That would be a reduction of 9,000 Danish teachers. There was a bit of an outcry in the media. Some agreed, some didn't. But it's not just in Denmark, so that the profound importance of human teachers are being questioned. A little less than a week ago, Elon Musk claimed on X that it is already possible for AI-assisted education to deliver better outcomes than 3.8 million teachers, that there's clear scientific consensus around this. But philosophy professor Ivan Salinger from Rochester Institute of Technology concluded on this remark from one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in Silicon Valley that their playbook is to overhype the technology, unfairly devalue human teachers, and frame budget limitations as making it necessary to embrace as much AI as possible. So here we are. This situation reflects, in my opinion, a crisis. Now, 79 years ago, a German-American political thinker called Hannah Arendt reminded us that crisis forces us back to fundamental questions. In 1954, she wrote an essay titled "The Crisis in Education." She wrote that a crisis forces us back to the fundamental questions, back to the questions themselves, and demand either new or old answers from us, but in any case, direct judgments. And I guess that's why we're here today. We need direct judgments. We need to stimulate our own critical thinking. So a crisis in education is not new, but the current backdrop is unprecedented. Professor Shoshana Zuboff from Harvard Business School wrote an article, a 60 pages long article in 2022. And there she points to the fact that today the epistemic power, the power over knowledge globally, rests in the hands of a few very wealthy tech companies whose AI-based products have an immense power over how we think, live, learn, and decide as humans, communities, and even societies. Their systems are not governed by ethics, but by an ideology of expansion, growth, scale, and profit. And we have welcomed this in our schools, many places. We had to. And this, as a matter of fact, started long before ChatGPT was even launched in the market a couple of years ago. In her book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism from 2019, I really recommend that everyone reads that. It's based on an article from 2015. She states that the problem is not the technology itself. The problem is not the technology in itself, but the business model and the underlying instrumentarian power behind technology. These technologies, the power of these companies and their advertising platforms that we today call social media are marked by what she calls radical indifference. This means, according to Professor Zuboff, that truth is inferior to profit. And that is why, according to Zuboff, disinformation is a systemic consequence of the surveillance capitalistic business model. And I would argue ChatGPTs and other large language models' hallucinations are the same systemic consequence of the same model, since these are based on scraping the internet. Yeah. So in the attention economy, where companies profit from keeping users engaged, sensationalized, sorry, pardon my English, or misleading content can create more likes, shares, clicks, swipes. Research and reality has already demonstrated that. This content is highly effective in pulling people in because it plays on emotions like fear, outrage, or curiosity. And as we all know, children are more vulnerable because their frontal lobes are not fully developed. That's at least one reason they're more vulnerable. So, in spite of these technologies, in some ways being useful as tools, if that is the metaphor we use to describe them, and we can't do that, it's the underlying business model's indifference that stands in stark contrast to what schools, in my opinion, must stand for: places of ethics, inquiry, and meaning. Schools must, I argue, serve as sanctuaries, to be in the vocabulary of Professor Zuboff. They must protect the children from commercial data exploitation, and they must protect children's ability to wonder and to think, to critically reflect on and to explore the world without being reduced to a consumer or a data point. And here, human teachers can enter the scene. They can act as intermediaries between the child and the world, helping them cultivate a shared and pluralistic understanding of reality, of what it means to be alive with ourselves, to be alive with each other in the human world. Human pedagogy is more important than ever. So, just to go back to Hannah Arendt, actually, she did remind us that the essence of being alive lies in the process of thinking, the process, not in the outcome. She wrote in 1978, "A life without thinking is quite possible. It then fails to develop its own essence. It is not merely meaningless, that life, it's not fully alive. Unthinking men are like sleepwalkers." That was in 78. So thinking, in other words, and we need to be clear on this, is not about quick answers or perfect predictions. That is the job for an algorithm. That's a job for AI. Human thinking is about wonder, analysis, exploration, and ethical decision-making. And much more, actually. This goes back all the way to Socrates. This is why schools are more critical than ever. They must provide two fundamental things. One, the solitary act of thinking, teaching students to think independently without relying on technological crutches. And this is not instrumental. It's not just about being instrumental. It's about being fully alive. And two, the political act of judging, helping students learn to engage with others to create and sustain a shared world, a pluralistic democracy. And I think we're in a time where we need this more than ever. This is pretty serious. Because today, AI is not just about systems or engineering. That's kind of old school. Lots have happened since Professor John McCarthy in 1956 defined AI as the science and engineering of making intelligent machines, especially intelligent computer program. That was when the world was so simple. Today, AI is about much more, as Professor Kate Crawford writes in her book, The Atlas of AI. Read it, it's really good, from 1921. Listen to how she describes AI. I'm going to read a quote. Artificial intelligence is an idea, an infrastructure, an industry, a form of exercising power, a way of seeing. It's also a manifestation of highly organized capital backed by vast systems of extraction and logistics with supply chains that wrap around the entire planet. The cloud is not just a cloud, they're computer centers. All of these things are part of what artificial intelligence is. A two-word phrase onto which is mapped a complex set of expectations, ideologies, desires, and fears. AI is a way of seeing, she writes. And I think of Shakespeare's Hamlet. Remember, who's there is the first question. Who is there? Schools must help young people, children and young people, answer that question. See who they are, who the others are in the world together. That guidance has to be human to human, because only humans are ethical. We have a Danish ethicist called K.E. Løstrup. I know there are a few Danes here who would not know him. He highlighted that education and teaching is not just about transferring knowledge from teacher to student. Algorithm is so good at that. No, for Løstrup, education involves a much deeper relational aspect where both teacher and students are engaged in mutual ethical interaction. It's about understanding us and each other. Even with the best predictive models, even with the best literacy, AI literacy programs, the most advanced algorithms, the most personalized AI tutors, none of that matters, in my opinion, if we lose our capacity for critical thought, wonder, and democratic engagement. It comes first, it's the foundation. And this is not just about, holistic intrinsic values. According to the World Economic Forum, in 2025, analytical thinking remains the most sought after core skill among employers, with 7 out of 10 companies considering it as very essential. This is followed by resilience, flexibility, human flexibility, agility, along with leadership and social influence. These skills are human-centered skills. And when we talk about training for digital literacy, we must remember it is general critical thinking that lies at the heart of this a little bit, as what you also mentioned too with civic education. The findings from a 2025 study from Center for Strategic Corporate Foresight and Sustainability at Swiss Business School show students who engage in a higher level of what they call cognitive offloading to AI. Sometimes when we use AI, we're offloading our cognition to the machine. So students who engage in higher levels of cognitive offloading due to AI tool usage exhibits lower critical thinking skills, indicating that the reduction in cognitive load from AI tools adversely affects critical thinking development. We don't have much evidence yet. It's been a couple of years only, and we need more evidence, but we really need to act on a precautionary principle here. So I'm getting near the end now. At the end of the day, education is not just about equipping students with knowledge. It's about shaping their ability to think, to wonder, to act ethically in a complex and interconnected world. How do we do that? While generative AI offers quick answers and very convincing simulations, they cannot offer students the painstaking process by which healthy human communities, human understanding and insights are built. And I repeat, the painstaking process. We all know that, we're adults. It requires shared human experiences. It must be cultivated, it must be practiced, and it must be framed by humans. And I guess the reason why I find this so important is that also in Denmark, we've moved very quickly ahead with digitization, also in schools. And we are starting at a broader level, in one way to see the consequences, but also to step back a little bit and see, hey, perhaps it's okay to slow down just a little bit. And what that requires is human teachers conducting a pedagogy with a shared world experience. Only human, it seems so trivial. Perhaps it seems trivial to us, but if you read into some of the writing of some of these tech companies that dominate the discourse and holds the power in these domains, it is not trivial that only human teachers understand what it means to be human and to feel. Only human teachers have an experience of being a physical body in the world. And I know that's something that most of you from where you come from know all about and agree with. So I hope this day will also be a reaffirmation of the importance of schools and teachers as the stewards of these ideals. Let us ensure that our children and young people are not sleepwalking through a world shaped by AI. And that can be recommendation algorithms, as you mentioned, or it can be generative AI. AI is built into so many things now, but that they're living fully, thinking deeply, and engaging meaningfully with each other. And of course, consequently, with new forms of amazing technology. It's our responsibility. Thank you.